Have you ever ignored a voice deep inside because you were terrified? It might be telling you the truth. What if the person you trusted with your future carefully kept one part of their life sealed away, smiling every time you got too close and giving you just enough answers to stop you from asking more? Most people think betrayal begins with a dramatic confession. It doesn't. It begins with tiny omissions that seem too insignificant to challenge. One excuse becomes another, and before you realize what's happening, you've built your entire future on a foundation you've never bothered to inspect. By the time I understood that my wedding was only 3 weeks away, my name is Daniel, and at 68 years old, I believed life had finally decided to be kind to me again. I had buried my wife 6 years earlier after a long battle with cancer. Losing her left a silence in my home that no television, hobby, or friendly neighbor could ever fill. I convinced myself that love belonged to my past until I met Emily. She had a warm smile, an easy laugh, and a way of making ordinary afternoons feel meaningful. She remembered the little things about me, encouraged me to travel again, and somehow made me believe that growing old didn't have to mean growing lonely. When I asked her to marry me, she cried, hugged me tightly, and whispered, "Yes." In that moment, I truly believed my happiest chapter was still waiting to be written. There was just one detail that never quite fit. During nearly 2 years together, I had never met her parents. Every time I suggested visiting them or inviting them for dinner, she had another explanation ready. They were traveling. They valued their privacy. They weren't close. They hated large gatherings. None of those reasons sounded impossible, so I accepted them. Every family carries its own scars, and I didn't want to force her to revisit painful memories. Love, I thought, meant respecting the boundaries of the person you cared about. But as our wedding day approached, those explanations became more frequent and somehow less convincing. One evening, while finalizing the guest list, I casually asked, "So when should we expect your parents to arrive?" Without looking up from the invitations, she calmly replied, "They won't be coming. They're overseas helping relatives, and honestly, it's better this way." She said it so quickly that it felt rehearsed. I smiled, but something inside me refused to smile back. For the first time since meeting Emily, I wasn't thinking about our future. I was wondering what she was trying so desperately to keep in her past. And just a few days later, by a complete accident, I found something that made me question whether I knew the woman I was about to marry at all. For the next few days, I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. After all, everyone has parts of their life they don't like talking about. Maybe Emily's relationship with her parents really was complicated. Maybe I was letting wedding nerves cloud my judgment. But no matter how many reasonable explanations I invented, that uneasy feeling refused to disappear. It followed me through every conversation, every dinner, every smile she gave me. Then, completely by accident, I found something that changed everything. I was looking through the drawer in our study for the warranty papers to my coffee machine when an old envelope slipped from beneath a stack of magazines. It wasn't hidden, just forgotten. What caught my attention wasn't the envelope itself, was the return address. The sender's last name matched Emily's maiden name, the one she'd mentioned only once in passing. More importantly, the address was less than an hour from my home. I stared at it for several seconds, my mind refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. If her parents were overseas helping relatives, why had they mailed her a letter from a nearby town only a few weeks earlier? I didn't confront her, not yet. I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation, so I quietly searched the address online. It belonged to a modest brick house in a peaceful neighborhood. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. Yet every answer only created another question. Why lie about something so easy to verify? That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her confident voice saying, "They're overseas." It no longer sounded like a simple statement. It sounded rehearsed. By Saturday morning, curiosity had become impossible to ignore. I told Emily I was helping an old friend move some furniture across town. She kissed my cheek, smiled warmly, and reminded me not to work too hard. As I drove away, guilt tugged at me. I hated the idea of keeping secrets from the woman I loved, but another voice inside me whispered that if she had nothing to hide, this little detour would prove it. 45 minutes later, I parked across the street from the address on the envelope. The house looked peaceful, with neatly trimmed hedges and flowers blooming beside the front porch. It was the kind of home that belonged to people who took pride in simple things. Taking a deep breath, I walked to the front door and rang the bell, never imagining that the person who answered would completely change the course of my life. The door opened slowly, and an elderly man with silver hair studied me with cautious eyes. He looked to be in his early 70s, dressed simply, with the tired expression of someone who had carried disappointment for a long time. Before I could lose my nerve, I smiled politely and said, "Good morning. My name is Daniel. I'm engaged to Emily, and I was hoping to meet her parents." The moment her name left my mouth, the color drained from his face. He gripped the edge of the door as if he suddenly needed something to steady himself. Before he could answer, a woman appeared behind him. She looked at me, then back at him, and quietly whispered, "She found someone else." Those 4 words sent a chill through my body. The man stepped aside without another question. "You'd better come in," he said softly. His voice wasn't angry or defensive. It sounded defeated. As I entered the house, I noticed framed family photographs covering the walls. Emily smiled back at me from nearly every one of them: birthday parties, graduations, Christmas mornings, but something immediately caught my attention. Every photograph carried a surname I had never heard before. It wasn't the last name she had given me. I tried to convince myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she'd changed it after a divorce. Maybe there was some family disagreement. Then my eyes landed on a large framed wedding photograph sitting on the fireplace. It was Emily. She was wearing a white wedding dress, smiling exactly the way she had smiled the day I proposed. Standing beside her was another man. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind refused to accept what I was seeing. She had never told me she'd been married before. Her mother noticed where I was looking and slowly lowered her eyes. "She never told you, did she?" she asked. I could only shake my head. What followed over the next hour shattered every belief I had about the woman I planned to marry. They explained that Emily had cut ties with them nearly 5 years earlier after a series of lies, financial problems, and a marriage that ended in complete disaster. She changed her surname, stopped answering their calls, and disappeared from their lives without warning. The hardest part wasn't hearing that she'd made mistakes. It was realizing she'd erased an entire chapter of her life and built our relationship on the pieces she chose to leave behind. Then her father opened a small drawer, removed a thick folder, and quietly placed it on the coffee table. "Before you marry her," he said, "there's something else you deserve to know." My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Part of me wanted to close it immediately, drive home, and pretend none of this had happened. But another part knew there was no going back. The first document was a marriage certificate. There was Emily's full legal name, completely different from the one I'd known. The second was a court filing showing that her divorce had taken nearly 3 years because of unpaid debts and allegations of financial deception. Then came copies of collection notices, loan defaults, and letters from creditors. It felt as if every page stripped away another layer of the woman I thought I loved. Her mother watched me quietly. "Daniel," she said, "we're not showing you this because we hate our daughter. We love her more than anything. We prayed she would change. We hoped she'd tell you the truth before it was too late. But if she hasn't, then we couldn't let another good man walk blindly into the same heartbreak." I looked up and asked a question that had been haunting me from the moment I arrived. Why would she tell me you were overseas? Her father sighed deeply because she knew you'd eventually come looking for us. She didn't want us telling you who she used to be. Those words hurt more than any document in that folder. When I finally left their house, the afternoon sun felt strangely cold. During the drive home, I replayed every conversation Emily and I had ever shared. Every excuse suddenly sounded rehearsed. Every missing detail became impossible to ignore. Yet, despite everything I'd learned, I still wasn't ready to condemn her without hearing her sigh. Love has a way of making you search for one final explanation, even when your heart already knows the answer. Instead of confronting her immediately, I decided to verify everything myself. Over the next several days, I quietly searched public records, court filings, and property documents. One by one, every piece matched what her parents had shown me. There was no misunderstanding, no mistaken identity, no cruel family trying to ruin her happiness. The most frightening discovery came last. I found paperwork showing she had recently applied for a joint line of credit using the address of the home we planned to share after the wedding without ever mentioning it to me. That wasn't just another lie. It was a plan, and for the first time since I met Emily, I stopped asking whether I could trust her. Instead, I began asking myself how close I had come to losing everything. The hardest part wasn't discovering the truth. It was pretending I didn't know it. Every morning, Emily greeted me with the same warm smile that had once made me feel safe. She talked excitedly about flowers, seating arrangements, and our honeymoon as if nothing had changed. I smiled back, but inside, I was replaying every document I'd seen in that folder. The woman sitting across from me looked exactly the same. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had never truly known her. I decided to give her one final opportunity, not because she deserved it, but because I needed to know if honesty still had a place in our relationship. That evening, over dinner, I casually asked, "If your parents suddenly decided to come to the wedding, how would you feel?" She didn't hesitate. "They don't even know where I live," she replied with complete confidence. "Besides, they wouldn't come even if they did." My heart sank. It wasn't just the light, it was how effortlessly she told it. In that moment, I realized she wasn't protecting painful memories. She was protecting a carefully constructed story. The following night, I asked her another simple question. "Emily, have you ever been married before?" For the first time since we'd met, her smile disappeared. She looked at me for several long seconds before quietly saying, "Why would you ask me that?" Instead of answering, I reached into my briefcase and placed the old wedding photograph on the table. Her face turned pale. She didn't deny it. She didn't even try. "You went to see them," she whispered. I nodded. For nearly an hour, the truth came out piece by piece. She admitted changing her name after her divorce. She admitted hiding her financial problems. She admitted lying about her parents because she feared they would tell me everything before the wedding. Then she reached across the table, tears filling her eyes. "I love you now, Daniel," she said. "I was going to tell you. I just needed more time." I wanted to believe her. Part of me still loved the woman I thought she was. But trust isn't destroyed by one mistake. It dies from a pattern of deception. I quietly stood, slipped the engagement ring into her hand, and said the only words that mattered. "I could have forgiven your past, Emily, but I can't marry a future built on lies." Then I walked out, knowing the most difficult part was still waiting for me the wedding day itself. Walking away from Emily should have brought me peace, but instead I spent the entire night wondering whether I had made the right decision. Love has a cruel way of making you question yourself, even when the truth is staring you in the face. By sunrise, however, my doubts were gone. A marriage without trust isn't a fresh start, it's a lifetime sentence. I knew I couldn't stand before my family, my friends, and God pretending everything was fine. The wedding venue was already decorated when I arrived that morning. Guests were beginning to gather, smiling, laughing, and congratulating one another. Most of them had no idea that the celebration they'd been anticipating for months would never happen. Rather than disappearing or leaving everyone confused, I asked for a few moments of their attention. I thanked them sincerely for coming and apologized for the disappointment they were about to experience. Then I calmly explained that I had recently discovered serious truths about my relationship that had been deliberately hidden from me. I didn't reveal Emily's past or humiliate her in front of everyone. Those details belonged to her, and exposing them would have been an act of revenge, not justice. I simply told everyone that honesty is the foundation of any marriage, and without it, there could be no wedding. Some guests looked shocked. Others quietly nodded, as if they understood more than they were saying. As people slowly began leaving, I noticed two familiar faces standing near the entrance. Emily's parents. I had called them the previous evening not to accuse their daughter, but to thank them. Without their honesty, I might have walked into a marriage built on secrets I would only have discovered when it was too late. Her mother hugged me with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I gently smiled and replied, "Don't be. You didn't ruin my future. You saved it." Months later, I heard that Emily had finally reconnected with her parents and started taking responsibility for the debts and mistakes she'd spent years trying to escape. Whether she truly changed, I can't say. I hope she did, because everyone deserves the chance to become a better person once they stop running from the truth. As for me, I never looked at that canceled wedding as the day my life fell apart. I saw it as the day my life was protected. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't saying "I do." Sometimes it's having the courage to walk away before a lifetime of regret begins. If there's one lesson I carried forward, it's this: never ignore the questions that keep you awake at night. The truth may break your heart for a moment, but a lie can steal the rest of your life.